My name is Tanya Jones. I'm part of the Eat to Run crew. I'm a holistic nutritionist, I'm a strength and conditioning coach, and I'm also a multi-sport coach. I have been participating in endurance sport, mainly triathlon, but running the whole gamut for over 10 years now, and probably been competitive at age group level for the last 6. And I have been coaching multi-sport for the last 6 years as well. And during my adventures as a multi-sport athlete, I have had everything possible happen to me. I've had spectacular performances and absolute amazing disasters, if it's been digestive distress or injuries. And with all of that, I've just been slowly educating myself to try to learn more to support my body, which brought me to the holistic nutrition approach to be able to play hard for as long as I want to. And as I am aging in my journey, I am now focusing a bit more on perimenopausal and postmenopausal athletes and seeing how far we can take ourselves to continue to reach our goals and play as we want to. And now it's time for Sarah to tell you a little bit about herself.
Thank you, Tanya. Hello, everyone. Wonderful to be here with you tonight. I'm Sarah Cuff. I've been a holistic nutritionist for a decade now, and what a journey it's been just being able to work with hundreds of clients one-on-one and just really appreciate how we are all so unique and so different in what we require individually. On one hand varies so much, and on another hand we're also so alike in so many regards as well. And so some of the wonderful questions we've received, certainly the answers that we'll provide from what I see will benefit the majority, if not all of you, from all of these ways that we are alike, that we share a lot of our similarities. I am also a run coach, and I am a therapeutic coach most recently as well, utilizing the compassionate inquiry therapeutic coaching style. And I got into running, my gosh, about 20 years ago. I am still a runner to this day. I spent probably about 15 years just working on getting faster and faster. And once I figured I'd gotten about as fast as I could get 5 years ago, I transitioned over to the world of trail running, where I wanted to discover how far I could go. And after reaching 200 miles, I feel like I've gotten about as fast as I can get and gone about as far as I can go. And so now I am really focused on how can I, as Tanya mentioned, I am also aging, as I suppose each one of us here is. How can I continue to feel good and run strong for as long as I possibly can? I love running, and I want to be able to run right to my very last day, if at all possible. And so really exploring that, and the piece of it that comes into play here for me very much so is how can I nourish my body on every level, not just through food, although food is so important, but what are the other areas? Everything from breath work to yoga to meditation to sleep to just what are all the different pillars that we need to really prop ourselves up with in order to be healthy on every level. And I'll pass it over to Tanya or Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm also a holistic nutritionist. My certification is Nutrition Therapist Master, and I live in Denver, Colorado, and attended the Nutrition Therapy Institute here. And what led me to holistic nutrition is very similar to Tanya and Sarah. I struggled with some health issues throughout most of my life. And, you know, the traditional medicine system we have here in the States, at least, is very much focused on treating your symptoms and not your root causes. And so I just found myself in this endless cycle of, you know, maybe feeling better a little bit, but then it would just fall back down. And so I'm also an avid runner. And so that was very frustrating for me as a runner, you know, when we're very in tune with our bodies and we want to push them. And I wasn't feeling well a lot. So I pursued the route of holistic nutrition. I ended up finding Sarah and worked with Sarah, and she really just changed my life for the better in so many ways and encouraged me in a lot of different ways as well, and improved my running, and also inspired me to go back to school for holistic nutrition. So I found myself going back to school for that, and here I am. I'm honored to be part of the Eat to Run family, and I am more of a road runner. So I like the road marathons are my favorite distance, and I'm kind of finding myself right now looking to get faster, but also healing from a pretty significant injury. So right now I'm really focusing on anti-inflammatory protocols and, listening to my body, being grateful for my body. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. So thank you guys for coming tonight.
All right, thank you, Katie. I think what we're going to do now is we're just going to jump into the questions that we received when you registered. We're all going to go through a question. If anything comes up with any of you listening that you want to add in anything, feel free to just come off of mute and let us know what you have to say. The first question I have is a little bit triathlon related, but I think it applies to any endurance activity on the weekend. So this one is specifically talking about long rides on the weekend. Do you pre-fuel to simulate what you're going to do on race day, and what do you do for if you're an early riser? What they're thinking is that their stomach is going to be empty as they're coming out of the water, and so they're not sure how to prepare for that sensation. And so what I think is that if you're a triathlete, you do have to think about that time that you're going to be getting up, driving to your venue. You're probably going to be nervous. And then you're going to have to start your day horizontal, under some pressure, possibly with that squishy wetsuit on. And so you do actually need to practice your morning race nutrition to see what's going to sit well in your stomach. You don't necessarily have to get up 3 hours before you're going to go on your training day, because that could be a really long day for you. You might then just bring your size of your first morning meal down a little bit because you're going to be training a little bit sooner. So on your race day, you're probably going to have a good, 300-400 calorie breakfast 3 hours before race start. Then you're going to go, you might be sipping on some kind of sports drink on your way, and likely you're going to want to take in a little bit of extra calories right before you start the swim. And so you could do that with gels or sports chews, sports drink. You could have like a bite of some energy chew or have like a piece of a peanut butter sandwich. But you have to practice these things. And so on race day, what I do is I stick a gel in the sleeve of my wetsuit. I go do my warm-up swim. And then when I'm waiting in the start corral, I can take that gel 15 minutes before the swim starts, so that I'm not going to have that blood sugar spike if I take it too soon and we haven't actually started. So if you know you're in the corral and it's going to take half an hour before you to actually cross the timing mat, then you know when to take it. And so you can practice some of these things on your long training days, focusing on what can you digest well, what's going to keep you satisfied for a few hours, because you do have to swim and then get onto the bike before you can eat anything solid, but also taking into consideration what can you eat and then go horizontal. So I can't do anything that's coffee flavored. I can drink coffee, but I couldn't have a coffee flavored gel because it doesn't sit well in my stomach horizontal. So that's the trial and error that you're going to have to do. And then see what you can eat that's going to give you energy on your training day. So if you're going to go straight to a bike ride, maybe you have your breakfast, which is, oats and chia seeds and hemp hearts and whatever it is that you decide that works for you. Eat that and then start practicing your fueling regimen, which should be 15 minutes after starting the bike, you should start fueling in preparation of your race day, where you very well haven't had anything solid. If it's an Ironman, maybe you've been swimming for an hour already or longer. So what's going to give you enough energy to get to that 15 minutes on the bike and then start your fueling? I suggest every 15 minutes, but again, that's individual to you, but you want to start sooner than later. I hope that answers the question. Sarah or Katie, do you have anything to add to that?
I'm going to leave it there, Tanya.
Okay, fair enough.
One coach. That sounds like
Yeah.
a great answer to me.
I do have a little bit of excitement, so I tend to kind of put everything out there. So if I'm not clear, anyone feel free to chime in and ask questions. And now, Sarah, if you have a question.
Yeah, so I got asked a really interesting question. I received a really interesting question. Let me just pull it up. So I was sent a link to an article, and the article was called "Why You Should Not Eat Overnight Oats for Breakfast," which to me right away looked like a little bit of a clickbait. And I rolled my eyes a little bit and I clicked. And it was basically an article that stated that carb-rich breakfasts are never, notice the use of the word, never a good idea. And it went on to provide rather overly generalized reasons not to eat carbohydrates in the morning. And so all of your typical breakfast foods, smoothies and cereals and toasts and bagels, just cutting them all out. And overnight oats was the main star in the article, and saying that you should never eat those first thing in the morning. That breakfast should be based around protein and include healthy fats and fiber for satiation. And it did go on to conclude with overnights make a great dinner, which made me laugh. So there's a lot in that article that I would love to pick apart and play with, but I would like to state two main things. Basically, the article was stating that carbohydrate breakfasts are never a good idea. And so for everyone here as runners, triathletes, I think we all have a good sense that carb-rich breakfast can serve us very, very well, particularly in certain situations. And so I want to confirm that absolutely, like Tanya was just mentioning, before a race or before a very long workout, you really do need to be consuming carbohydrates. So yes, you do want overnight oats or a carb-rich breakfast. And this goes, I don't think I've worked with a single athlete that I would say otherwise for. Even those who I've worked with ketogenic diets, when it comes to race day, we've still always focused on making sure that we're practicing nutrient timing. And nutrient timing means fueling your long runs, your races, and your hard runs with carbohydrate-rich meals. So usually breakfast. And so that is my first point. My second point is that if we are going to make the statement that a carbohydrate-rich breakfast is never a good idea, we want to make sure we're talking about who that might be true for. If you are someone who is not metabolically efficient, who is struggling to improve your metabolic efficiency, then this may very well be true. It likely is, actually. And certainly when I was really, really worn down, HPA axis disorder, some people call it adrenal fatigue, I went full on fat-based breakfast, and it helped bring me back to good health for many different reasons. So if you're struggling with metabolic efficiency, which means that you're finding yourself gain fat around your midsection, you're tired all the time, you feel like you just don't have energy for exercise. There's a host of different symptoms to suggest you may not be very metabolically efficient. Then, yeah, absolutely. You probably want to, I would argue, base your breakfast around healthy fats with some protein and possibly some fiber. I'm going to argue for different people, we would be looking at different things there. So this is certainly a good case of that article felt like clickbait to me, and I'm sure that it got the attention of many people, but it is not true. Most of their statements were not true. And for most people, you're going to find that it depends on who you are and what state of health you're in and what your goals are. So I'll leave that there if anyone has any questions, or if Kaydee or Tanya has anything to add to that.
I think the only thing that I would add is that your breakfast also, it matters what activity you're getting up to do. You know, if you're going to do that long endurance ride, then maybe you do need those carbs. If you're going to strength train, then maybe you don't. Maybe that's when that protein or a higher fat breakfast would make sense. And also with the HP axis disorder, you're probably going to have to modify your training as well. So, you know, if you're looking at being an ultra or an endurance athlete, if you're struggling with that scenario, you likely aren't going to be putting in the big miles that would require the carbohydrate fueling. So just, you know, if you've noticed that you've got the weight gain and the fatigue, more than just your breakfast is likely going to have to change. You can't just change your breakfast and still be an endurance athlete and expect appropriate results. That's all that I would like to add.
Yeah. And if you want more in depth about that, Sarah and I did a webinar about sports performance that, well, we're going to talk more about these in some further questions or some questions coming up, but kind of talks more about the nutrient timing that she mentioned. And when you need a little bit more carbohydrates, when, especially if you're about to race, like the carb loading, using it for recovery as well with protein. So we do have a webinar on our website too that addresses this. So I think I have the next question. Is that okay? So I got a question from a runner that has been running on and off for a few years. They have a torn meniscus, but are cleared by their doctor and physio to go back to running. But they are calling themselves an unconditioned runner because they've had to take a break from running and are asking, how do I get back into running? How do I start running again without injuring myself? A good thing that they are doing is 3 times a week of strength training, which is great. For somebody that is coming back from an injury, I would say one of the biggest things is to be patient first and foremost. You're going to be coming back from whatever injury it is you have. Your body is trying to heal itself. So this is the time to really tune in with your body and listen to the cues of, do you need extra rest today? You probably shouldn't be pushing in this time period. You just really want to focus on healing. And I really recommend, I'm a beginner run coach in the winter, springtime. And one of our programs works really well for somebody coming back from a running injury. I myself have used it coming back from an injury, and it's the run walk method where you can actually go to a PT and they can help you come up with the run walk method to come back from injury. So basically it is, you are slowly increasing your run time and lowering your walk time. So you're going to start walking maybe 3 to 4 minutes, maybe running for 30 seconds for a couple weeks. And then as the weeks go on, you're going to be running more, walking less. That can really help your body get used to the impact again of running. So as you know, like when we're running, we're putting a lot of extra weight on our joints, on our tendons, our muscles, our tissues. So if you've been injured and you've been off for a while, then you're going to have to get your body well adapted to that pounding again. So that is a really good and safe way to come back from a running injury and to reintroduce your body to that impact. Another thing that is really important and why we're here is nutrition. You can definitely improve your comeback and support your comeback and healing with anti-inflammatory foods. And what I mean by anti-inflammatory are going to be foods that are, well, actually, let me talk about inflammatory foods. So what are inflammatory foods? They're going to be like your highly processed foods with your vegetable oils, like your canola oil, cottonseed oil, soybean, all of those, very high in omega-6s, which are highly inflammatory for the body. So you want to be avoiding those. Also, a lot of added sugar. Alcohol is also an inflammatory food or drink. So avoiding that, really filling your diet with antioxidant rich foods. I really like to just go for the dark leafy greens. Those are a fantastic food packed with antioxidants. Also eating the rainbow. I know everybody's probably heard that, but making sure you're eating a wide diversity of foods, cooked also in different ways, raw and cooked, to make sure you're getting that vast array of nutrients. Also incorporating that into your diet. Healthy fats, like Sarah said, are also very, very healing for the body and have anti-inflammatory properties as well. I also like to add in, we want to encourage getting most of our nutrients from whole food sources, but if you do supplement, and Sarah has a good plan on that too, about why are you supplementing? What is the use of using a supplement? And I like to promote the use of collagen when you are trying to heal. it's a good source to help you heal your joints, your connective tissue, and it's a good source of protein as well, which is needed for healing. And Tanya is the strength training expert, so I'm going to give that over to her. But cross training is also a great way to come back from injury as well, and to prevent injury. So Tanya, if you want to talk about some other ways
sure.
to cross train.
Yeah. Thanks. So I think when you're returning from injury and running is your goal, you still want to consider that you might need to gradually increase your impact. And while you're also doing that, you're trying to work on your cardio, so you can look into cross training. So this might be an opportunity where you would maybe go to the pool and do some water running. You can still work on your form. You can still use the pace clock to be able to work on getting actual cardio, so you're not just plodding away in there. You can have some structure to make it not so challenging to stay focused. And it's a really nice way to have the cold water, compressive forces help with, and the movement help with getting all those nutrients around in your body. And then you're not having the impact from being on the road. So you can actually build your endurance that way. You can also add getting onto a stationary bike or going out to ride, whatever you're comfortable with. But again, that's just another way to build your cardio, so you don't have to rely on, if you haven't been running for a while, you're trying to get your cardio back, as well as trying to deal with the impact forces of your sport. And so you can get a little bit more cardio without the impact, while you have to save your cardio from running to those shorter run windows, blocks as you go. And then if it's specifically for this one where it's a knee injury, you need to look above and below where the injury is to also address mobility. And so it's generally pretty rare that it's the point of injury that's the problem. If it's the knee, often there might be lack of mobility in the ankles, maybe there's lack of mobility in the hips. And so if you're rehabbing, you can now set those really good habits of, when I finish my run, I do my hip mobility sequence routine. I do some strength training that has me moving in all planes of motion. Running is front back motion repetitively. You're essentially doing single leg squats going forward for up to some points hours. And it's all in the same plane. You need to move laterally, you need to step backwards. And so this would be a really good time to incorporate moving strength training in all planes of motion, ideally to make sure that all of the muscles around every single joint are uniformly strong. And so if you're looking at your hips, you want to strengthen your quads, which run down the front. You want to strengthen your glutes and your hamstrings that run down the back. You want to strengthen your glute med and your TFL that are on the side of your hips, that are your stabilizers, and your adductors, which is in the inner thigh. All of those muscles then can keep your joints in the position that they want to be. And then you get to go forward with less irritation and potential injury. And so just as part of your routine, you're going to be following your prescribed return to run plan. You're going to eat your anti-inflammatory foods and avoid your inflammatory foods, which isn't the right word, but that's what I'm going to use. And then get your strength training going in all planes of motion, set your good habits, have your run drills that you're going to do that are going to open up your hips and open up your ankles and get things ready that way. I think that's everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Would just love to add, when it comes to inflammatory foods can be different foods for different people. And so some of us have food sensitivities as certain foods that we eat, and they cause inflammation in our body, maybe not your body, but in my body. And so for me personally, I know that if I'm dealing with any kind of an inflammatory situation, caffeine's out for me, but for most people, it wouldn't be. For me, dairy is an absolute no-no if I'm looking to heal inflammation. If I want to cause inflammation, I can eat a lot of dairy. So for everybody, you've got your thing. You might have your thing. Some lucky people out there don't seem to have a thing. But we really want to tune into our bodies and figure out what that is, because that's going to be a key piece in recovery.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. All right, so on to the next question. And I think this is, again, this was written in the context of triathlon, but totally applies to everybody. And so this is about needing the bathroom on the run every 10 to 20 minutes when racing. This person is fine on the swim and the bike, but then on the run, they're having to use the bathroom a lot. And so if I address this first in the context of triathlon, and then probably Kaydee and Sarah can address it as runners. Depending on the distance that you're doing, there's sort of two things that can be causing bathroom issues. Short course triathlon racing is very hard and aggressive for a short amount of time, and that can limit your ability to digest what you're putting into your stomach and what you've had leading up to starting the event. Long course racing, your body just kind of gets tired of processing things. Your digestive system's can only do so much work. If you've been on a long course now, you know, the swim and the bike, you're maybe looking at 7 hours already. You've been asking your body to go forward. Maybe it's hot. All sorts of different things can happen by the time you hit the run. Often at that point, now you've been doing this for a while, and now you're asking your organs to jostle around with whatever you've put in there. And so specifically for triathlon, you have to look at what can you consume, what can you digest on the bike. The purpose of the bike in triathlon is to get from point A to B as fast as possible using the least amount of energy, and then to eat and digest, because you need those calories to be in you and processed before you start the run, because you're often limited in your ability to then process calories on the run. By then you've got cardiac creep, which means your heart rate's starting to come up a little bit just because you've been asking your body to do activity for a certain amount of time. And then now you're using your legs and your arms to propel yourself forward, and you've got your organs jostling. And so your stomach can only do so much. And often this can then have you need to expel some of that food in one direction or the other. And so it could be that you're going to vomit or you're looking for a porta-john. Sometimes this can also be in relation to the food choices that you've made. And so while most endurance sport, we do often use a lot of easy, digestible, fast carbohydrates, that can be really hard on your system. And so if you've been doing that for hours, or even on a shorter course, if you've been doing that under intensity, you can be causing a reaction in your intestinal system, again, that it can't process. And again, that calories, that whatever you put into your system is going to need to get out one way or the other. And what I've also found is what might be happening is that the concentration of the calories that you're consuming might be too high. And so if you take a sports gel or a sports drink or whatever it is that you're consuming, it has to get to your intestinal system, and then it actually needs to cross into your bloodstream for it to then get to your muscles and give you the energy that you need. It needs to be a certain concentration for that to happen. But you're also sweating, so you are losing water in the sweat process. And then if you take something that's really concentrated, that nutrition will struggle to go from your intestinal system into your bloodstream. And then you could get a little bit of a backup that you might not know is happening, because we can perform pretty well. And then you take some more calories, and then it backs up more. And then you take some more. And if you're diligent and you're doing your every 15 minutes, I take my nutrition. But if you're not taking in enough water to dilute that, to get it into your bloodstream, you could then be causing a backup. And you can probably tolerate that on the bike because your stomach's not moving. You're doing your thing, but the minute you start jostling your organs and adding your higher heart rate now that your arms are pumping, that could lead to a scenario that needs to get out. So then you just might need to look at the way you're taking in your nutrition, the timing of it, and the amount of water you're consuming or the type of carbohydrates that you're consuming. And also you might need to add some protein because maybe it's too much carbs going through you too quickly. And so while that is the ultimate goal, is to have that rapid acting energy, if it's making you go to the porta john every 20 minutes, it's actually not doing you any benefit. And so maybe you need to slow that process down a little bit so that you can absorb what you've put in and continue to go forward. And that's all just going to take practice. Some of it might be that you're going to need to consider what you've eaten the day before and practice your day before nutrition, because that might be setting you up poorly for how your stomach is going to function on race day. Because we're often nervous. You're not going to process at the same rate as you would doing a coffee ride with your friends, or even a structured intensity ride. You just add the heat and the excitement of an event, it's quite likely that you're in a position to have some GI distress. I think that was all that I wanted to say about that. I hope that made some sense to you guys. Sarah and Katie, do you have something in specific to say for running?
Well, I'm still stuck on the when you move your arms, that's what raises the heart rate. So I'm just going to keep my arms a little stiller to keep my heart rate down anyway.
No, I mean, from going from the bike to the run, there is a heart rate increase for sure. And that's going to be from the organ jostling and the arm pump, because your upper body is not doing much for you when you're riding.
I'm teasing. And also when I run, my arms are like, my husband just pointed out, he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm running.
And
what are you doing?
Cheek to cheek.
Yes, exactly. Doesn't everybody do it that way?
Yeah. I would say too, like if you are continuing to try everything and do everything right, and you're continuing to have these GI issues, well, first of all, when I start working with my clients, I encourage them to get a food sensitivity or food intolerance test, just because there's things that, as Sarah pointed out so wonderfully, we're all biochemically individual. So what works for one person doesn't mean it works for the other. And so you might have a food allergy and a sensitivity to something that you're eating maybe the night before, even up to 72 hours before you're going to do this hard effort workout, race, whatever it is, and you find yourself having this GI stress and you're like, well, I'm doing everything right. You might want to get a food intolerance, food allergy test just to see if it's something you're consuming on a daily basis and your just inflammatory markers are just through the roof on a specific food. That could also be contributing to some distress while you are exercising. As Tanya said, everything's jostling around, and then add a lot more inflammation from something you might have a reaction to. It can really be the perfect
Absolutely
storm.
Yeah. And I'll just add two things in all seriousness. Gut training is a thing.
Yes.
So there's physical training and there's gut training. And so maybe one of the first things, if you haven't tried it already, is just to do the same thing. And yeah, know that the results might not be pretty the first few times, but there is such a thing as gut training. There's some great studies to show that it works. You can train your gut to absorb and digest the food. Just keep doing it over and over again, just like running. It will get easier, or hopefully it will get easier. The other thing is stress in life. So I've worked with a lot of clients that have had severe GI distress issues. And honestly, I worked with a couple for over a year, and nothing that we did nutritionally touched the issue. And at the end of the day, for some people, not all people, some people, it really is needing to address the fact that they're only getting 6 hours of sleep every night, or that they have an extremely stressful job they're just not willing to address. So for some people, it's got nothing to do with nutrition whatsoever. There's some sort of life stress that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next question is window for eating after a workout. So what's the ideal window for eating after a workout? What to eat, and does it change depending on the workout you just did? So that's kind of a three-part question. Let's start with the window for eating after a workout. ASAP. I'm always ASAP. If you can make your recovery nutrition up in advance and bring it with you, if you're going somewhere, if you're going to be in the car, leave it in the car. When you get back from your run, if you're landing back at your house, can you make it right away? Go straight to the blender and throw together a smoothie, whatever it might be. ASAP. Ideally, I always say within 45 minutes. There used to be this 45-minute golden window. It really, 45 minutes has nothing to do with it. It really just is all about ASAP. Why? The sooner that you can get carbohydrates into your body, I'm giving away from the second part of the question, sooner you can get those carbohydrates into your body, you're going to bring your stress levels down. And as soon as you can bring your stress levels down, you move from catabolic state, which is breakdown, into anabolic state, which is going to help build you back up. And so we want to do that as soon as possible. And so to answer the second part of the question, what to eat? We want to reach for nutrition that is mainly carbohydrates and has some protein also. So in about a 4-to-1 or a 3-to-1 ratio of carbohydrates to protein. And so you might, if you have a protein powder and you're putting together a recovery shake, it would be about 60 grams of carbohydrates to about 20 grams of protein. And any whey isolate has about 20 grams. If it's a plant-based, maybe about 15 grams of protein. And so the carbohydrates, to reach approximately 45 to 60 grams of carbohydrates, you're going to want one banana, about 25, plus a cup of, say, frozen berries. There's another 10. And you're going to throw some tart cherry juice in there, right? Tart cherry juice is highly anti-inflammatory and going to support your recovery process. And that'll throw in maybe a half a cup of tart cherry juice, another 20. Oh, perfect. You've got your juice, your berries, your banana or dates, and that's going to be enough carbohydrate. Plus that scoop of protein powder, and then anything else you throw in there. I like cacao, is really for flavor and for anti-inflammatory benefits. Maybe some turmeric, maybe some ginger. I like to keep my smoothies really simple. But as long as you've got that 4-to-1 to 3-to-1 carbohydrate to protein ratio. I mentioned a shake because it's easiest for digestion. And as I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have found, as soon as you're done a workout, usually the appetite isn't in high gear, especially if it's a hard or long workout. We don't feel like chewing, eating, digesting a whole bunch of vegetables, high fiber things. So oftentimes the smoothie is the easiest way to go, but it can be different for everyone. Some people do like to chew. And then the last, does it change depending on the workout you just did? Yeah, absolutely. The recovery nutrition that I'm speaking to is for hard and long workouts. So anything that is longer than 90 minutes, and anything that utilizes, for the most part, your anaerobic system. You're working really hard. If you have just come back from an easy run, an aerobic workout, shorter workout, less than an hour, just go to your next meal. You don't have to worry about doing anything specific, and just go on to whatever your next snack or meal would be within the day. Tanya, Katie?
Oh, I think you got it. That was a great answer.
That was really good. My next question is going to kind of go off of Sarah's. It is, I know I should be eating more calories, but I don't feel hungry. How do I add in these extra calories? So I just want to preface this by saying and I know Tanya and Sarah are big, we promote intuitive eating, being really in tune with listening to your body, your own cues. So everybody's obviously going to be different, but there are times, like Sarah just said, when you are doing these really hard workouts, even sometimes long runs, where you come back and like, I'm just not hungry. I don't have an appetite. It's actually centered, like your biology really is why, because when you are doing these hard efforts or these longer runs where you're out there for a long period of time, your blood is actually pumping away from your digestive system into your muscles, into your limbs. So really that's what's suppressing your appetite. Now, I do believe and promote intuitive eating, but also you kind of in a way have to train your body and your gut to be able to take in those much needed nutrients after your runs, and especially before, to fuel. So again, I'm not saying you have to just force feed yourself all the time, but this is something that you want to try to practice, reaching for that recovery shake, even though you may not be hungry. Like Sarah said, within immediately is great, but even about 1 to 2 hours after is okay. So don't feel like you have to just gulp something down, but you can like have a smoothie, sip on it, and then throughout after your workout if you're not hungry. But I think what Sarah said absolutely is a smoothie is a really great way to go when you're not feeling super hungry and wanting to chew a lot. You can pack some really great nutrients in there and also add some healthy fats there. You've got your protein, your healthy fats, your fiber, and your carbohydrates. So again, not saying force yourself, but practice. Really try to overcome that feeling of, oh, I'm not hungry, I can just skip it. Because ultimately you're going to be digging yourself into a hole. You're going to affect your training, you're going to affect your next workout, your next long run, even your race. So really start practicing this in your training to really just immediately try to fuel yourself, even though you're not feeling hungry. Do you guys have anything else to add there?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think if it's not just based on your actual recovery nutrition, some people just aren't really food motivated. So again, this is where, like you've all said, the smoothie is an easier way to get in those calories if you're not someone that's particularly food motivated. So this wouldn't necessarily be the smoothie that you're going to have post-workout, but it might be, I'm going to try to have breakfast smoothie now. And even if it's taken me 2 hours to get that nutrition in, at least like that's the start of the habit of my goal today is to try to get in this smoothie in amongst the few meals that I am motivated to eat. Because I have found there's a lot of people that I work with in the strength training community. They're just not motivated by food. It could be, 7 hours. I don't know what this is like. That's not my issue. I could eat all the time.
Yeah.
They can get on the computer and forget to eat for 7 hours. And so that's, having that smoothie next to your water bottle to just try to get that nutrition in there, and then putting in those things that are going to support your body. So getting in your greens in your smoothie, your protein, getting in some carbohydrates, having different types and different flavors. So you're then able to get your variety of nutrition in those smoothies and until maybe starting that process would promote a little bit more interest in consuming food. All right, I have another surprise triathlon question. This one is about the calories that you're intaking on the bike in your sport bottle. And so I'm going to make some assumptions on what they're talking about, and I'll explain those assumptions. They're wanting to know if just taking a few sips of their sport bottle every fourth, I'm going to think, nutrition intake is enough. And so with a lot of the athletes that I work with, when you're doing endurance sport for like triathlon specifically on the bike, maybe you're on there for 3 to 6 hours. You generally have to carry all your nutrition with you. And so you're going to probably do that in a couple different methods. And so some people will put their bottle on their bike with, say maybe 200 calories worth of nutrition in that bottle. And then they might also take some gels, and they might take a peanut butter sandwich in their back pocket. So there's lots of different food going on. And often to keep track, because you do want that consistency of carbohydrate energy to get you through the day, you might eat off a timer, which I've mentioned. It's just what I use. Everyone has their time that they've practiced that allows them to get what they need. For this example, I'm going to stick with the 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes, my watch beeps, and so I know I got to do something. And so when it's a 5, so a 15 or a 45, I know that I'm drinking. And when it's a 0, I know that I'm eating. So that's just my method. And so I don't have to think. It just is a 5. That means I need to take in my liquid calories. And then on a 0, I take in either a gel or something that's a little more solid. And that system allows me to process what I've taken. And I have found that the first 15 minutes being a liquid option has set me up better than trying to go for a gel, because you've just come out of the water where you've been horizontal. You're generally really dizzy as you're running through your transition. You're probably still dizzy on the first part of the bike. You're super excited. Your heart rate's up here and you got to settle down. So I find a liquid nutrition hit at that first 15 is more beneficial than trying to eat something. So I think the question is, does that little sip give me enough calories for that timing window? And that's going to depend on your bottle, how much calories you put in, and you will have practiced this. So I do 200 calories in a bottle, and I know that I'm going to take a gel. What I need is 200 calories an hour on the bike to do well on the run. So I'll take half a gel, and then I'll drink a quarter bottle. Those are my quantities that get me my 200 calories an hour. And I've got lines on my bottle. So I just drink until that quarter line is done. And I know I've got 50 calories. If I take half a gel, I know I've got 50 calories. I do that 4 times in the hour. I've got my 200 calories an hour. So that's just practiced. And so, yes, you can. If you are just randomly taking some sips, you then don't know what you're getting in. So to answer the question, if you've practiced and marked out and know how much you're consuming, then yes, those couple sips can be enough. If you haven't, then you need to practice and sort that out. And that's when you can ask for help. And I write everything down and write on my bottles. I know which bottle has what. I have some athletes who write a little note on their aero bars, and it says what to do at each time interval. So that's just practicing. And then I might take a couple bites of something solid, and I don't really count that into my plan because I'm going to eat that when I feel I need to have that solid to feel happy. Some days I don't need it, some days I do. I don't know if there's anything you guys can add, but if you'd like to, go for it.
So I'm just curious too, though, because even when we're running, so some runners like to fuel their entire marathon, say, off of liquid calories. And that's very, very common, especially when you hit the elite ranks. And so you had mentioned 200 calories per bottle. I know there are Morton carb-rich drink has 320 calories per 500 milliliters, which would be useful maybe in this situation as well as in a running race, as well as Scratch, my favorite brand
Absolutely.
to go to. Scratch just came out with Super Fuel, which is 400 calories per 500 milliliters. So there's options that are really, really calorie dense, but you're drinking them and it should be way easier to digest.
Yes. And all I would add to that is that's the scenario where you also need to be drinking water. Because you can't put in something that's that concentrated without water and expect it to get into your bloodstream. So you could carry your concentrated mix and then drink water running at the aid stations, or on the bike, you can grab water off the course. The example that I gave with the 200 calories in a bottle is that I know I don't have to drink a ton of water to process that. I personally have done a super concentrated bottle, and it's only ever gone badly for me, because it's like I took that sip and it's like it just punched into the bottom of my stomach before I could get the water in there, and it made me nauseous. That's just me. My stomach's a total jerk, and it doesn't like for me to play hard without having some protest. So again, you can train your gut to take in those calories in the way that you want to. And then sometimes you're just going to have to, it's going to revolt, and you're going to have to choose the method that works. The method that I went through just happens to be the one that works for me. I have to consume more volume of liquid that's less concentrated, and then my stomach will allow me to run well off the bike. Everybody's different. There's those iron guts that could take 2 gels and no water and be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I have heard that from both runners and triathletes also. It doesn't even matter that because Morton and Scratch Super Fuel are cluster dextrin molecule packs, and we're supposed to be able to absorb and digest them without as much water. That's the argument. And when you read the science behind it, it's like, okay, that makes sense. But in practice, I don't always see that. So it's definitely worth trying, because
Absolutely.
they've tried to give us a product that works with less liquid, but not to say it's going to work for everybody.
Yeah, that's great. Good point. All right.
Okay, whose turn is it? Is it my turn?
I think it's yours.
Okay. Eating before a workout. What should you eat before a workout? Carbohydrates or protein? Okay, so this depends on what type of workout you're doing. If you are doing an aerobic workout, meaning that your heart rate isn't going to go above your aerobic threshold, and if you want to know what your aerobic threshold is, just take your age and subtract it from 180. So 180 minus 4, how old am I now? Do you really need to know how old I am? 180 minus 42 is 138. If I go above 138 beats per minute, my heart rate goes above 138, I'm entering anaerobic zone. So that's when I know that my fueling is going to need to be different for that workout. If I'm going out for an aerobic run, less than 138, average, hopefully not jumping up above that, then I can fuel with fat, with protein, maybe carbohydrates, but not usual. This would be your typical daily dietary regime. Whatever you have fallen into is your normal daily diet that works for you. Have whatever that might be. Go out for your easy aerobic workout. You are going to be just fine. Why? Because when you are out there working out aerobically, you're burning mostly fatty acids for fuel. And of course, we all have plentiful fatty acids. Even those who don't look like they do, we all have plentiful fatty acids stored on our body. So no worries there. However, if your workout is going to be an anaerobic workout, or if you're going to be out there a very, very long time, because even though we are burning mostly fatty acids when we are working out aerobically, fatty acids only burn in the presence of carbohydrate. So slowly we are going through carbohydrates as well. So if you're out there long, 2 hours or more, or you're going to be working out hard, anaerobically, then the answer is carbohydrates. Choose a carbohydrate-rich meal, which goes back to the first question I answered, so I won't get into that and most of the other questions. Carbohydrates would be the answer there. Tanya, Katie?
Oh, I think you're good. Yep.
Katie's up.
Yeah, so I have a question, some ideas for some pre-race food for a nervous stomach. So again, at this point, when you get to your race, we all know we've been gut trained and have been practicing the food we're going to intake before we get to race day. And we all know nothing new on race day. So as we know, you get to the race, your adrenaline's pumping, you're nervous. That can kind of kick up your GI distress or whatever. We don't want that. So a way to lessen that risk of having some GI distress if you have a nervous stomach is I recommend eating about 3 hours before you race, just to ensure you have proper digestion. Now, what does that food look like? It's going to look different for everybody, but like Sarah just said, it's going to be carb rich. Now, from the race, depending on your distance, you may have already carb loaded. So you're going to be already carb loaded, plus this carb rich breakfast 3 hours before on your race day. Now, before a race and before, like Sarah was saying, your hard intensity runs, you want to make sure you're doing low fiber, lower fat, and lower protein. Also kind of staying away from these inflammatory foods. Everyone's going to be different, but meat is just harder to digest, and so is dairy and fiber. So these are just harder to digest. So I would recommend avoiding those as well a couple days before your race too. So the types of foods you want to be reaching for a nervous stomach on a race are going to be carb rich, easy digestible carbs like oatmeal. If that's what you've been training with, that's a great option. And again, avoiding any high fat, high fiber foods that are harder to digest. But again, everybody is different. So what you have been practicing for in your training, do that on race day about 3 hours before your race.
Yep. All
Yeah,
right.
I guess I would just add to that is for some people, almost nothing works. And I found just defaulting just to straight up juice.
Yeah.
There's usually a juice that will work, if nothing else, while working out the issue behind what's going on.
Oh, and something to add, I know the question was about pre-race food, but also if you do tend to get anxiety for racing and all of that, the food is definitely important to nail, but in practicing meditation, your breathing, positive mindset, your mind also is a very powerful tool that can help to calm you down also before your race. So just to add that as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely.
All right, I think we're at the last question that's been submitted, and then we'll open it up to any live questions that you guys might have. So our last one is about menopause and weight gain, and how can I lose weight, or how should I change my eating? And I joked earlier, I just did a presentation on this. So again, we've got on our Eat to Run YouTube channel, there is a presentation that covers all of this. So I'll just give a few notes, because I could literally talk for an hour about this one, and we don't want to do that. When you're going through menopause, that's a pretty stressful time for your body. So as we've mentioned lots during this conversation, you want to reduce stress in other aspects of your life as best you can. And so that would be consuming anti-inflammatory foods and watching what you're eating, looking at trying to get good sleep. Maybe you have to adjust your schedule a little bit to change the type of training that you're doing to be able to bring some stress down, because you just got this internal stress that's not going to go away for a while. For looking at how you would change your eating, I think you would have to look at really focusing on making sure you're nailing your protein in each and every meal that you have. Having that protein is going to help keep you building muscle and building a strong body, which is going to help reduce stress because it's not breaking down. And trying to balance your blood sugar. So if you're eating consistently throughout the day, getting your protein, carbs, good quality fats, balance your blood sugar to help balance your hormones, because there's already turmoil happening with your hormones. So if you can control stress in any way you can, and balancing your blood sugar is one massive way to control that, then that should be your focus. Could go into lots more about it, but I really do think that if go check out the presentation, we can absolutely have a follow-up conversation on it. It's a little bit too big. This question, unfortunately, is a little bit too big for a snippet type of answer. And lastly, with that, and I think what we've touched on a lot throughout this whole conversation as well is supporting your digestion. So looking at other things that might be triggering you. Is there any food sensitivities? Your body's changing. You very well now be sensitive to something you weren't sensitive before. And so looking at what you're eating, maybe you need to journal and see how you're feeling with what you've been consuming, and look for those trends, because it could be that's the inflammation that's making you feel like you're gaining weight, because maybe you're just bloated. It might not be a weight gain. It might not be fat. It could just be an inflammation response to something you're consuming because your hormones are not the way they used to be. And out of all of that, gigantic exclamation point is making sure that you are eating a lot of protein to support your body and keep it building in a solid, positive direction. That's the best I can do for that one right now. It's just too big, I think, to continue going at this point. I hope that gave you a little something. Did you guys have anything that you wanted to add to that for any of the things that I touched?
No, that's great. Thank you, Tanya.
Okay, so now I don't have any other questions in the chat function or in the chat box. Is there anyone who has any questions that they would like to ask live? Just come off of mute if it's open to any of us, or if you want to direct it to one of us, go right ahead. Otherwise, we're just going to think that we're awesome and we're fully educated you and you're good to go. You know everything.
Do we ever really know everything?
Nope.
Oh, we are awesome. That's a nice comment. Thank you. I think that we've had some discussion where we would like to open up the Ask Your Nutritionist night to be something that we do in the future, maybe every few months, so we could all get together, continue having this open dialogue with everybody. So when these questions do come, you have access to all of us to have them answered. We're all available. You can find us all on the Eat to Run website. So if you have a question, you can just put it to anyone on there if it's directed, or there's an info that you can submit your question to on the website. So go for it there. We'd be happy to respond. If you know anyone who might benefit from these questions that we have addressed, if you've had some conversations in your run groups or tri groups or cycling groups, feel free. We'll be sending out a link with the recording of the session. So feel free to pass that on. Maybe they'll join us in the next session and we can get more questions and you can learn more and we can share more knowledge, because we're always happy to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, for showing up. We'll get the recording out ASAP, and we will hope to see you again, like Tanya said, in a few months.
And if you guys haven't been on our website recently or seen our posts, we have some, like Tanya said, her perimenopause and menopause is on there. We have a webinar that Sarah and I did for performance nutrition and fueling for performance. And then we have some blog posts as well. So it kind of encompasses a lot of what we talked about, but it definitely goes more in depth. So take a look at our website, and there's a lot of good info on there. So thanks for coming.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. And we'll hope to see you at the next seminar that we do. Happy training.